I still remember how the sunlight streamed through the blinds that Thursday afternoon, casting harsh stripes across Daniel's smug face. After 14 years of loyal service to Brightline Advertising, I sat frozen as my boss's 29-year-old son fired me with a flick of his wrist. "Your methods are outdated, Clara," Daniel said, leaning back in his father's leather chair. "We need fresh perspectives, not old-school thinking." My stomach dropped. The client accounts I'd built from nothing, worth millions to the company, suddenly meant nothing. The late nights, missed birthdays, and countless sacrifices all dismissed in a 10-minute meeting. I forced my face to stay neutral as Daniel slid a thin folder across the desk. "Your severance details. HR will escort you out." "Of course," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. As I collected the folder, a memory flashed. Richard, Daniel's father, insisting I sign an unusual contract clause years ago, one guaranteeing 2 full years of salary if I was ever dismissed without performance cause. Daniel had no idea what his father had promised me, and I wasn't about to remind him. Yet, the walk back to my office felt endless. Colleagues, many I'd personally hired and trained, suddenly found their computer screens fascinating as I passed. Not one made eye contact. Their silence spoke volumes. I packed slowly, tucking framed photos of my daughter's graduation into a cardboard box alongside industry awards with my name engraved in gold. 14 years reduced to a single box and a potted plant. "Need help?" Mia, a young copywriter I'd mentored, whispered from my doorway, eyes darting nervously toward Daniel's office. "I'm fine," I replied, giving her a small smile. "Just fine." As I emptied my desk drawer, my fingers brushed against a thick blue folder. Inside was my original contract, signed by Richard himself. I ran my finger over the clause on page 4, the unusual protection he'd insisted upon. "Because great talent deserves security," he'd said back then. Through the glass walls, I caught Daniel watching me, satisfaction written across his face. I tucked the contract into my bag, my mind suddenly crystal clear. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. "He did what?" Lisa gasped, nearly spilling her coffee across her law office desk. My college roommate turned corporate attorney hadn't changed a bit. Still fiercely protective and brutally honest. I slid my contract across to her, the critical clause highlighted in yellow. "Richard insisted on this 14 years ago. I never thought I'd need it." Lisa adjusted her glasses, lips moving silently as she read. Her eyes widened. "Clara, this is ironclad. 2 years full salary and benefits, if terminated without cause. This is worth about $300,000, I finished, plus benefits." "Daniel clearly didn't review your contract before firing you." Lisa's smile turned predatory. "Classic nepotism mistake." As Lisa made copies, my phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. "Clara, it's Richard. Heard rumors. What's happening at my company? In Switzerland until Tuesday. Call me." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Richard was on vacation? He didn't know what his son had done? "Everything okay?" Lisa asked, returning. "Maybe better than okay," I replied, showing her the message. "Seems Daddy Dearest wasn't consulted about my firing." Lisa's eyebrows shot up. This just got interesting. I was sorting through job listings at my kitchen table when my phone rang, a local number I didn't recognize. "Clara Mitchell speaking," I answered professionally, despite being in pajamas at noon. "Clara? Michael Allen here. Got a minute?" I nearly dropped my coffee. Michael Allen, owner of Creative Pulse, Brightline's biggest competitor, was calling me directly. "Of course," I managed, straightening as if he could see me. "I'll be blunt. I heard Brightline let you go. Their loss is potentially my gain. Your campaigns for TechVision alone were industry-changing." My mind raced. TechVision was Brightline's biggest client, my client, really. I'd built that relationship from a tiny startup to a tech giant. "I appreciate that, Michael. I'm not just offering a job, Clara, I'm proposing a partnership. Full creative control, profit sharing, your own team." As we spoke, a text came through from Jenny, my former assistant. Daniel reassigned TechVision to himself. "First meeting was disaster. CEO asking where you are." I smiled to myself. "Michael, I'm very interested, but tell me, what's your approach to client relationships?" I already knew my answer would be yes. The cafe was nearly empty when Grace slipped into the booth across from me, nervously checking over her shoulder. "I could get fired for meeting you," she whispered, still loyal after 8 years as a Brightline account executive. "I appreciate the risk," I said, sliding her favorite latte across the table. How bad is it? Grace's normally cheerful face crumpled. Chaos. Daniel's reassigned all your accounts to junior teams with no transition plan. TechVision is furious. I tried to hide my satisfaction. What about the company finances? Stable? She hesitated, then leaned closer. That's actually why I agreed to meet. Daniel's selling off assets, the downtown office space, 3 company cars. There's a rumor he's diverting funds. To where? Real estate deals. Personal ones, and he's closed Richard's office completely. I felt a cold certainty settle in my stomach. Does the board know? Nobody questions him. They're terrified of losing their jobs, like you did. As Grace left, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my severance anymore. Daniel wasn't just incompetent, he was deliberately destroying what Richard had built. And I might be the only one who could stop him. You too? Marcus looked shocked as he joined our growing table at the back of Riverside Bar. Once Brightline's creative director, he'd been restructured out 2 months ago. Join the club, said Patricia, our former finance director, raising her glass in bitter toast. I looked around at the 5 former executives, all over 40, all coincidentally let go since Daniel took control 6 months ago. All replaced with younger, cheaper employees with connections to Daniel. When I left, I thought it was just me, admitted Tomas, the former head of digital. I pulled out copies of my contract clause. Richard included this in all our contracts. Check your paperwork. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock as they read. This is legitimate? Patricia asked, her financial mind clearly calculating. My attorney confirmed it, I said. None of our terminations had performance documentation. We're all eligible. As they frantically searched through emails and cloud files for their contracts, my phone buzzed with a message from Grace. Emergency staff meeting tomorrow. Daniel looking nervous. 3 major clients withdrew accounts today. I smiled into my drink. The dominoes were starting to fall. Clara, I need your help. Richard's voice sounded older, tired in a way I'd never heard before. My former boss had finally called from Switzerland, where he'd been recovering from heart surgery. I'm listening, I said carefully, keeping my tone neutral. Something's wrong at Brightline. The board's been evasive, clients are leaving, and Daniel... He paused, pain evident in his voice. Daniel won't give me straight answers. I remained silent, letting him continue. You've always been honest with me, Clara. What's happening to my company? I took a deep breath. Richard, Daniel fired me 2 weeks ago. No cause, no warning. The silence stretched so long, I checked if the call had dropped. That's impossible, he finally said. Without board approval or my sign-off, he can't terminate senior staff. He did. And I'm not the only one. Marcus, Patricia, Tomas, Irene, anyone from your original team. Another long pause. Clara, I'm coming home early, but I need someone I trust on the inside until I get there. Would you help me save the company, unofficially? I closed my eyes, conflicted. My loyalty to Richard battled with the opportunity at Creative Pulse. I'll need to think about it, I answered honestly. It's brilliant, Michael exclaimed, pacing his sleek office at Creative Pulse. Absolutely brilliant. I just outlined my strategy. Directly approach Brightline's mismanaged clients with customized campaigns addressing exactly what Daniel was ignoring. Personalized service, experienced account managers, and strategic thinking beyond flashy social media. TechVision's CEO already called me, Michael continued. They're furious about their last meeting with Daniel. Said he spent the entire time showing Instagram reels instead of discussing their product launch. I nodded, unsurprised. TechVision needs substance, not style. Their engineers respect data, not viral videos. If you lead this initiative, we could potentially bring over 5 major accounts within a month, Michael said, eyes bright with ambition. We'll need to expand the office, hire more staff. Including some experienced former Brightline employees? I suggested. Absolutely. Your team, your choice. As we shook hands, finalizing my new role as partner and chief strategy officer, I thought about Richard's plea for help. My hand hovered over my phone, but then I remembered Daniel's smug face as he fired me. If Richard wanted to save his company, he needed to start by controlling his son. I put my phone away. My loyalty now belonged to Creative Pulse. The annual Media Innovation Awards was the last place I expected a confrontation. Yet there was Daniel, red-faced and furious, cornering me by the champagne fountain. "You're poaching our clients," he hissed, close enough that I could smell expensive whiskey on his breath. Guests nearby grew quiet, sensing drama. From the corner of my eye, I noticed Richard had just entered the ballroom, looking thin and pale. "I haven't approached anyone who didn't contact me first," I replied calmly, keeping my voice level. Creative Pulse simply met needs that Brightline is currently overlooking. "Lies," Daniel's voice rose. "You took Tech Vision yesterday. They were our biggest account." Heads turned. I maintained my composure. "Tech Vision made a business decision based on their recent experiences. Perhaps you should ask yourself why." "You sabotaged me," he nearly shouted. "That's when I lost my careful restraint." "No, Daniel, you did that yourself when you replaced expert teams with inexperienced friends, ignored client needs, and dismantled your father's company piece by piece." The room fell silent. Daniel's face went from red to white as he realized Richard was standing just feet away, hearing everything. Without another word, Daniel stormed out, shouldering roughly past his father. Richard's devastated expression almost made me regret my words. Almost. Brightline was imploding spectacularly. Within a week of the awards disaster, 3 more senior employees resigned, including Daniel's most loyal defender on the creative team. Grace kept me updated through daily texts. Daniel locked himself in his office all morning. Then, staff meeting canceled 3rd time this week. Finally, he's selling the company art collection. People are taking photos of empty walls. Michael and I worked 18-hour days, personally calling Brightline's nervous clients, demonstrating the attentive service they'd been missing. Our pitch success rate hit 80%. I was reviewing a proposal when Grace called, her voice a panicked whisper. "Clara, Daniel's in a lawyer's office right now. I overheard him on the phone. He's building a case against you, claiming client interference, confidentiality breaches, everything." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "Does he have evidence?" "He's angry, not smart," Grace replied. "But be careful, he mentioned your personal emails, something about accessing your old company account." I thanked her and immediately called Lisa, who listened grimly. "Forward me everything," she said. "And Clara? Document every client who approached you first. We'll need proof." That night, a certified letter arrived. I was being summoned for a legal deposition. The war had officially begun. The law office where the deposition took place oozed old money, all dark wood and leather chairs that creaked, importantly, when you sat. Daniel arrived with 2 attorneys. I brought only Lisa. "Miss Mitchell," began Daniel's lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman with calculating eyes. "Did you access Brightline's confidential client information after your termination?" "No," I answered truthfully. "Then how do you explain your knowledge of Tech Vision's product launch timeline?" Lisa cut in. "My client ran that account for 6 years. She doesn't need inside information to know their development cycles." For 2 grueling hours, they fired questions while I responded with calm, factual answers. Daniel grew increasingly agitated, fidgeting and whispering heatedly to his attorneys. Finally, Daniel burst out. "This is ridiculous. She stole our clients." Lisa pounced. "Mr. West, are you suggesting that clients don't have the right to choose their agencies?" "Of course they can choose, but so you acknowledge these clients voluntarily left Brightline? No coercion?" Daniel's face flushed. "They left because she poisoned them against me. After I modernized our outdated approaches, So you admit you dramatically changed the service these clients were receiving? Without consultation?" Daniel realized his mistake too late. His lawyer tried to interject, but the damage was done. As the deposition concluded, I noticed Richard sitting quietly in the back, having slipped in unannounced. His expression was unreadable as he watched his son's implosion. Richard looked 10 years older as he settled heavily onto the park bench beside me. Joggers passed by, oblivious to the drama unfolding on our quiet seat. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, his voice rough. "I know you don't owe me anything. I worked for you for 14 years, Richard. I can spare 30 minutes. He stared at his hands. "I've seen the financial reports, the client exodus, everything." He looked up, eyes haunted. "How do I fix this, Clara?" The question hung between us. I thought carefully before answering. Brightline has lost its core identity. Daniel replaced experienced staff with friends, substance with flash, and loyalty with fear. The company's bleeding expertise, clients, and money. Richard nodded slowly, accepting the harsh truth. There might be a solution, I continued. Creative Pulse needs to expand quickly to handle our new clients. A merger could save jobs at Brightline, preserve client relationships, and stabilize both companies. Richard's eyebrows shot up. A merger? You mean sell my company to Michael Allen? I mean combine strengths, save what can be saved, and create something stronger than either company alone. Richard fell silent, contemplating. And Daniel, what happens to my son in this scenario? That was the question I couldn't easily answer. The shouting from Richard's home office was audible even in the kitchen, where I awkwardly sipped tea with Richard's wife. Helen, you went behind my back. Daniel's voice echoed down the hallway. I'm running Brightline now. Into the ground. Richard fired back, his voice stronger than I'd heard since his return. Helen winced but didn't seem surprised. It's been like this since Richard came home, she confided. Daniel doesn't understand what he's done. The shouting grew louder. If you sell to Michael Allen, I'll sue you myself, Daniel threatened. Those are my shares too. Shares you've been undermining daily. The board has evidence, Daniel. The real estate deals? The missing artwork? Silence fell, then Daniel's voice turned cold. You choose that. That has been Clara over your own son? Fine, but if you betray me, I'll sell my shares to Goldmark Ventures tomorrow. They'll strip Brightline for parts before Allen gets near it. The study door slammed so hard the kitchen windows rattled. Seconds later, Daniel stormed through, stopping short when he saw me. His eyes narrowed with pure hatred. Enjoying the show? This is all your fault. After he left, my phone buzzed. A voice recording from Grace. Daniel's entire threat to sell to Goldmark, captured perfectly. The bomb dropped at precisely 9 a.m. TechVision's press release hit every industry publication simultaneously. TechVision signs exclusive partnership with Creative Pulse, citing strategic alignment. The statement included a glowing quote about me personally. Clara Mitchell's understanding of our business goals made this transition natural and necessary. By noon, 2 more former Brightline clients had announced similar moves. Creative Pulse's stock jumped 15%. Brightline's dropped 20%. Daniel's response came swiftly and desperately. A rambling interview with Adweek claiming I had sabotaged client relationships and stolen proprietary strategies. He sounds unhinged, Michael noted, forwarding me the article. My phone rang. Mia, one of the few remaining original team members at Brightline. Clara, it's crazy here. Daniel's ordered all mentions of you removed from the website and case studies. He's even taking down your award plaques from the lobby. I thanked her for the information, feeling oddly calm. Daniel was erasing me just as he'd tried to erase his father's vision for the company. Also, Mia added hesitantly, there's a board meeting tomorrow. Emergency session. People are saying it's about a potential sale. I glanced at my calendar, where a confidential meeting with Richard was already scheduled for that evening. The endgame was approaching faster than I'd anticipated. You have evidence of all this? The business reporter asked, eyes wide as she reviewed the documents spread across our conference table. Everything's verified, I confirmed, indicating the folder containing Daniel's threats, financial records Grace had obtained, and client testimonials about their reasons for leaving Brightline. I'd decided a preemptive move was necessary after Richard revealed the board was wavering on the merger proposal. To be clear, the reporter said, you're not claiming Daniel West fired you illegally. You're saying his subsequent actions have damaged Brightline deliberately? The evidence speaks for itself, I replied carefully. Multiple clients left because their needs were ignored. Staff departed because of hostile management. And company assets were sold for purposes unrelated to business operations. The story broke online that afternoon, just as the Brightline board meeting began. My phone immediately lit up with texts from Grace. Board members reading article on phones. Daniel trying to confiscate devices. Richard just handed out merger proposal packets. 2 hours later, I received a formal email from Brightline's board secretary. The board requests your presence tomorrow to discuss potential partnership options. Daniel's wild response came minutes later. A single line to my personal email, you're dead to this company. But the company, it seemed, didn't share his opinion. The Brightline boardroom fell silent as I entered, 12 pairs of eyes tracking my movement. Richard sat at the head of the table, Daniel noticeably absent. "Miss Mitchell, thank you for coming," said Francis Wong, the lead director. "Richard has proposed a rather unusual solution to our current challenges." I took the offered seat, directly across from Richard. "I'm happy to discuss any options that benefit both companies." Francis nodded. "The merger proposal has merit. Creative Pulse's growth combined with Brightline's established infrastructure could yield significant advantages. With one condition," interjected Gordon Hayes, another board member. "Daniel maintains a role in the new organization." I kept my expression neutral despite my internal objection. "What role do you envision?" Before anyone could answer, the boardroom door burst open. Daniel stormed in, face contorted with rage. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "You're negotiating with her? The person destroying our company?" "Daniel, please," Richard implored. "Sit down." "No, I won't be part of this betrayal." He pointed at me. "She planned this from the beginning. Getting fired, stealing clients, it was all calculated." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Richard stood slowly. "Daniel, that's enough. The financial evidence speaks for itself. The merger is our best option. You'd choose her over me? Your own son?" The pain in Richard's eyes was unmistakable, but his voice remained firm. "I'm choosing to save what's left of my company." I found Daniel alone in the Brightline kitchen, staring blankly at the coffee machine as it gurgled. The board meeting had ended, with tentative merger approval, pending financial review. "I brought my own," I said, raising my travel mug when he turned. His expression shifted from surprise to bitterness. "Come to gloat?" I shook my head, taking a chance by sitting across from him. "I came to check next steps with the transition team. Finding you was coincidence." He laughed hollowly. "Nothing about you is coincidence, Clara. This was all planned revenge." "That's not true." "Really? Dad talks you like you walk on water. Clara built our biggest accounts. Clara understood the vision. Now you've taken everything. The clients, the company, even my father's respect." For a moment I glimpsed the insecure son behind the arrogant facade. "The board's condition," I said quietly, "about maintaining a role for you." I agreed. His eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Why would you do that?" "Because despite everything, this company was your father's life's work, and you're his son." "I don't want your pity position." "Then earn a real one," I challenged. "Not through your last name, but through actual work." He stared at me for a long moment before standing abruptly. "I'll fight this merger until the final vote. Count on it." The first threat arrived by email, anonymous but clearly from Daniel. "Back off, or everything you care about burns." I forwarded it to Lisa without comment. The second came 2 days later, a note under my apartment door. "Last warning." Michael wanted to involve the police, but I hesitated. Pressing charges against Richard's son would destroy any hope of a clean merger. Grace called in a panic. "Clara, it's getting scary here." Daniel and Richard had a huge fight in the office. Daniel was yelling that he'd end everything before letting the merger happen. Security had to separate them. My hands shook slightly as I hung up. Daniel's desperation was escalating dangerously. That night, I worked late at Creative Pulse, feeling safer in the office than at home. Around midnight, the security alarm blared. Someone had tried to access our client's server room. Security footage showed a hooded figure fleeing. Though their face wasn't visible, I recognized Daniel's distinctive designer sneakers. "We have to report this," Michael insisted, reviewing the footage. "Breaking and entering, attempted data theft. These are serious crimes." I stared at the frozen image, remembering the frightened boy behind Daniel's anger. "One more chance," I said finally. "I'll talk to Richard first." Michael shook his head. "Your compassion might cost us everything, Clara." I feared he might be right. The emergency board meeting was called after Grace emailed everyone Daniel's directive to accidentally delete backup files of major client campaigns before the merger. Grace stood trembling before the board, describing Daniel's increasingly erratic behavior while I sat silently nearby, asked to attend as an observer. "He told us to shred client contracts from before his time," Grace explained, "and to remove all historical performance data that predated his leadership." Francis Wong looked appalled. "You have evidence of these directives?" Grace nodded, sliding across printed emails. "He said anyone who didn't comply would be fired with cause." Daniel burst in halfway through her testimony, pointing accusingly. Grace, you're fired. Immediately. The board members stared in shock. Mr. West, Francis said firmly, you don't have that authority at this moment. The board has temporarily suspended your operational control pending our investigation. Daniel's face contorted. You can't do that. I'll sue all of you. Daniel, please, Richard pleaded. Don't make this worse. As security was called to escort Daniel out, I stood up. Grace, if you find yourself suddenly available, Creative Pulse has an opening for an experienced account director. Grace's eyes widened. Really? Effective immediately, I confirmed. The look of utter betrayal on Daniel's face as he was led away almost made me regret the offer. Almost. The final merger vote was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9, both companies' leadership teams had assembled in Brightline's largest conference room, tension thick in the air. Richard looked exhausted but determined as he distributed the final proposal. Michael reviewed the terms with our financial team, occasionally nodding in satisfaction. At 9:45, Frances Wong received an urgent call. Her expression grew grave as she hung up. Daniel has sold his shares, she announced, all of them, to Goldmark Ventures. The room erupted in chaos. Goldmark was notorious for dismantling companies and selling their parts, exactly as Daniel had threatened. How many shares? Richard asked, voice barely audible. 15%, Frances replied. Not enough for control, but enough to block special resolutions like a merger. My mind raced. Our carefully constructed deal was unraveling before the vote even happened. There's a solution, I said, standing. All eyes turned to me. Creative Pulse can increase our offer by 20% if Richard matches it from his personal holdings. That would dilute Goldmark's share below the blocking threshold. Michael looked startled. Clara, that's an additional $12 million. It's worth it, I said firmly, but we need to move quickly. Richard nodded slowly. I'll match it. Let me call my bank. As he stepped out, Frances leaned toward me. You've planned for every contingency, haven't you, Clara? Not everyone, I admitted, but enough. The news of our counteraction hit Daniel hard. According to Grace, he'd expected the Goldmark move to derail everything. Instead, it simply accelerated the process. The merger vote passed overwhelmingly, with only Goldmark's representative opposing. I was reviewing transition plans in my new office, formerly Richard's, when he knocked on the open door. Got a minute? He asked, looking both proud and melancholy. Of course. I gestured to the chair across from me, his old chair. I've been thinking about the final leadership structure, he said, lowering himself carefully, and I've decided to fully retire. The new company needs a clear leader, not two figureheads. I started to object, but he raised his hand. You and Michael have earned this, Clara. I'll keep a board seat, nothing more. You built Brightline from nothing, Richard. And now I've watched you save it from nothing. He replied with a sad smile. That's worth more to me than another title. As Richard stood to leave, his phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed heavily. Daniel just tried to delete the main client database. IT caught it in time. My shoulders sagged. Even now, he wouldn't stop. Richard, I said quietly, we can't keep letting this happen. He nodded, suddenly looking every year of his age. I know, and I think I know what needs to be done. The cease and desist letter from our combined legal team landed on Daniel's desk at his new downtown office space, a sad little startup he'd hurriedly established after the merger. Within hours, he'd called 5 separate lawyers, all of whom apparently gave him the same advice. He couldn't win this fight. He tried accessing our systems again last night, Michael reported during our morning briefing. Even used Richard's old credentials. I shook my head. Disappointed but not surprised. Did he get through? No. IT had already changed everything. But here's the interesting part. He wasn't trying to damage anything this time. He was trying to copy the client management system you built. I considered this. He's trying to replicate our success, not destroy it. That felt like progress, oddly enough. By afternoon, Daniel had requested a meeting, not with lawyers, but with Richard and me directly. We agreed to meet at neutral territory, a private room at the city library. Daniel arrived looking disheveled but strangely calmer than I'd seen him in weeks. I can't beat you, he admitted bluntly. My investors are pulling out. My one client is returning to you, and I'm facing potential criminal charges. Richard leaned forward. What are you proposing, Daniel? His answer surprised us both. I want to learn, from the beginning. the right way. You want to offer Daniel a position? Michael looked at me like I'd suggested hiring a piranha as a lifeguard. After everything he's done? We sat in the newly renamed Allen & Mitchell Associates boardroom, 1 week after Daniel's surprising request. Not a leadership role, I clarified. An entry-level position in account management under Grace's direct supervision, with strict performance metrics, regular reviews, and a zero-tolerance policy for misconduct. Michael shook his head in disbelief. Why would we take that risk? I slid a folder across to him, Daniel's written admission of his actions, his formal apology, and a legally binding agreement to drop all claims against both former companies. Richard asked me for mercy, I said simply. And honestly, I think Daniel finally understands what he lost. Michael reviewed the documents carefully. 6-month probation, security restrictions, no client contact without supervision. You're not making this easy for him. It shouldn't be easy, but it should be possible. Later that day, I called Daniel personally. Monday, 8 a.m., junior account coordinator position. Grace will be your direct supervisor, and you'll share a cubicle with the new interns. His voice was humbler than I'd ever heard it. Thank you, Clara. I won't let you down. Don't thank me yet, I replied. Proving yourself will be the hardest thing you've ever done. I know, he said quietly. That's why I need to do it. 3 months into the merger, Allen & Mitchell Associates held its first all-staff meeting in the expanded headquarters. 400 employees filled the auditorium, a mix of former Brightline and Creative Pulse staff, now wearing the same company lanyards. Michael and I took the stage together, presenting growth figures that exceeded even our optimistic projections. Tech Vision had expanded their contract. 2 major new clients had signed. The stock price had stabilized at 30% above pre-merger values. This success belongs to everyone in this room, I said into the microphone, scanning the audience. Every person who weathered uncertainty, who embraced change, who put clients first. My eyes found Daniel sitting in the back row beside other junior staff. He wasn't sulking or sneering. He was taking notes, actually engaged. Grace had reported that despite initial resistance from team members, Daniel was working diligently, staying late, handling basic tasks without complaint. He'd even apologized individually to staff he'd mistreated. After the presentation, as people mingled with refreshments, I noticed Richard watching his son from a distance. Pride and sadness mingled in his expression. He's really trying, Richard said when I approached. Yes, he is, I agreed. Was I wrong to give him power before he earned it? Richard asked quietly. We all make mistakes, protecting those we love, I answered, thinking of my own daughter. The question is whether we learn from them. Richard nodded slowly. We're both learning. 1 year to the day after Daniel fired me, I stood in my corner office overlooking the city. Allen & Mitchell Associates now occupied 3 floors of the downtown tower with a 4th under construction. A knock at my door revealed Richard, looking healthier than he had in months. Got time for an old friend? He asked. Always, I smiled, gesturing to the sitting area by the window. He settled into an armchair with a contented sigh. The board approved Daniel's promotion to full account manager. Grace's recommendation was glowing. He's earned it, I acknowledged. His client retention numbers are excellent. Richard nodded, eyes misting slightly. He told me yesterday that he finally understands what I built, what we all built together. That it wasn't just about profits, but about relationships and trust. I thought about the long journey from that horrible day in Daniel's office to now, the fear, the anger, the vindication, and finally the rebuilding. He mentioned something else, Richard continued. He said you meet with him monthly to review his progress and give feedback, that you've never once brought up the past. I shrugged. The past already happened. I'm more interested in what happens next. Richard reached over to squeeze my hand gratefully. You could have destroyed him, Clara. Instead, you helped save him too. I smiled, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in victorious gold. That's the thing about true leadership, Richard. It's not about winning at all costs. It's about building something that lasts.